given by equation 12. Oh, good. Finally, thank God. Okay, so I am showing what we did last time. So it's not a major issue. If the recording has missed some of it, you have not missed much because we did all that in the previous lecture also. Yeah, system is funny. Doesn't record right from the beginning. So in case of a purely inductive load, we used equation 12 to figure out the current, not Ohm's law. And that gave us equation 13 as the formula for current. Now you try to fit this into the standard form again. And before we do that, what we did was we defined a parameter called reactance of the inductance, which was given the name or given the symbol XL. It was defined as omega L, which works out to 2 pi FL. So using that, the formula for current became Vm divided by XL sine of omega t plus theta v. And that, when we try to fit it in the standard form, which is on the left hand side of this equation, which is above equation 17. That is the standard form, and the actual value is Vm divided by XL multiplied by sine of omega t plus theta v. So if I compare the two, I got Im equal to Vm divided by XL, and I got a pi by 2 phase difference between the two phase angles. Theta I is turning out to be theta v minus pi by 2. This is very different from what we saw in case of a resistor, where both voltage and current were in phase. This is the major difference in case of an inductive load. Then what? Oh yeah, because theta I is less than theta v, we call this the case in which current lags the voltage. Then I did calculate the instantaneous power. The formula is there. It's a slightly more complicated formula. But anyway, once you take the average of this and figure out the average power, it turns out to be 0, which was not the case in case of a purely resistive load. So the pure inductive load does not consume or dissipate any power. This is what we had done until the end of previous lecture. Now today, let's go to the third case, which is the capacitive load. Okay. Method is the same. Results are slightly different. This time around, I'm going to be using equation 22, which is the well-known formula connecting the current and voltage, current in the capacitor and voltage across the capacitor in the time domain. So V is already known, small v is already known as equation 1. I put that in equation 22 and I get equation 23, which is minus Vm divided by Xc sine of omega t plus theta v. Xc is the reactance of the capacitor, which is defined as 1 upon omega c, which is 1 upon 2 pi fc. Okay. The unit for XC and XL and R is always ohm. Once we have got the current, let's try to fit it into the standard form. And by doing that, this time around, we see that theta I actually is theta V plus pi by 2. In case of inductive load, theta I was theta V minus pi by 2. Here it's theta V plus pi by 2. So we say that current leads the by 90 degrees. You can take the average of this, you can multiply small v by small I and take the average over one full cycle, you will get 0 again. Try to do it yourself. Okay, so a pure capacitor also does not consume any power. Now the general case, which is normally very close to real life. I have put a series combination of resistance, inductance, and capacitance. Here, if I use the same method which I have been using in the previous cases, you will see that equation that we need to solve turns out to be slightly more complicated. It has got integral as well as differential coefficient. It is possible to solve this equation by using Laplace transform and many other techniques, but a more suitable approach for handling complicated AC circuits is that instead of using a time domain, we try to use frequency domain. In that technique, differential coefficients are not necessary, integration is not necessary. Everything becomes purely algebraic. The price we pay for that is that we have to use complex numbers. The frequency domain technique is based on a concept called phasors, which I'm going to talk about soon. But before I do that, let me close this document and talk a little bit about complex numbers. I know that you know most of it, but let's quickly review complex number theory once, because in this course we are going to be handling complex number operations a lot. Okay, so I'll stop this document, begin a small document on complex numbers. The concept of phasors is used to simplify the mathematical analysis of complicated AC circuits. We use frequency domain instead of time domain. There is no need to solve differential equations. However, the use of complex numbers gets in. You know that a complex number has a real part and an imaginary part. The symbol normally used for a complex number is small z, for the real part small x, for the imaginary part small y. And we use a symbol j for square root of -1. It is what you were taught as iota in your high school. We are not using I here because I is normally reserved for current. Okay. The equation 1 is also known as rectangular or Cartesian representation of a complex number. Alternatively, we can write a complex number in polar form also, where we take magnitude and phase angle. Equation 2. Okay, you know all this, but let's quickly sum it up. Modulus or magnitude of z is represented by putting two vertical bars on both sides of z, and theta is the phase angle. It is very easy to see using Euler's identity that the real part is modulus multiplied by cos theta, and imaginary part is modulus multiplied by sin theta. Other way around, modulus is square root of x square plus y square, and theta is tan inverse phi upon x. We will be doing these calculations a lot. So please be mindful of these equations for converting back and forth from polar to rectangular and rectangular to polar forms. Graphically, this is how things are. The real part is on the x-axis, the imaginary part is on the y-axis. That is the rectangular representation. Alternatively, you can draw a straight line from the origin to the point at which the number is being represented. The angle that the line makes with the x-axis is theta, and the length of that line represents the modulus of the complex number. Okay. Some examples on calculations. Suppose I ask you to calculate to convert 2 plus j3 into polar form. What you will do is you'll take square of 2, square of 3, add the 2, and then take square root. I hope there is no mistake in my calculations. Square root of 13, I think, is the right answer for the modulus or magnitude. Theta is, of course, tan inverse 3 divided by 2. It turns out to be 56.31 degrees or 0.9828 radian. Please note one thing, that if the angle is supposed to be in degrees, you always put a small 0 on the top. If you don't put a small 0 on the top, I would assume that you are talking about angle in radians. So don't forget in the exam quizzes, etc., to put a small 0 when you mean to write the angle in degrees. Okay. Small point, but important. Problem 2 is about converting a complex number from polar form into rectangular form. It's fairly straightforward. 3 with an angle of 62 degrees gives you 3 cos 62 degrees plus j 3 sin 62 degrees. You should double check my calculations. If there is a mistake, I'll correct the document. Okay. Problem 3, z equal to angle of plus 45 degree. That means the magnitude of z is 1 and angle is 45 degrees. So in this case, real part and imaginary part are both equal to each other. Cos 45 degree is same as sin 45 degrees. It is 1 upon square root of 2, which is approximately 0.707. So the answer is 0.707 plus j 0.707 approximately. Problem 4, magnitude is 6.228, angle is minus 73 degrees. You should be able to figure out the answer. Okay. Problem 5, the last one. A rectangular representation is given to you. The imaginary part is a negative number. Take square of 1.8209, square of 5.9559, add the 2, take square root. You should get 6.228. And you take tan inverse of minus 5.9559 divided by 1.8209. You should get approximately minus 73. Okay, small document, but worth looking at. Now let me move to the next document in terms of circuit analysis. Oh, this I've already shown. Sorry, my mistake. 5. What is a phasor? Pay some attention here. Small v, as usual, is written by equation 1 in time domain. Okay. Now, this is all well known to you. So I repeat things in every document just for the sake of completeness. Now, come back to Euler's identity, which says that e to the power jx is equal to cos of x plus j sine of x, where x is any real number. Suppose I put x equal to omega t plus theta v in this identity. Okay. I'll get e to the power j of omega t plus theta v equal to cos of omega t plus theta v plus j sine of omega t plus theta v. That means cos of omega t plus theta v is the real part of e to the power j of omega t plus theta v. I'm writing it down. Equation 6. Look at equation 6 first. Cos of omega t plus theta v is nothing but real part of e to the power j omega t plus theta v. Okay. Now what we do is to obtain a symbolic representation of the signal in frequency domain, and that representation is called phasor representation. What we do is, on the right hand side, first of all, we break the angular part into two different components, e to the power j theta v and e to the power j omega t. Okay. And small v, obviously, because it has got an amplitude of Vm, that also has to come in to write equation 7. Okay. Now, from equation 7, we generate the phasor representation of small v by dropping Re. We know that it's there, but we drop it symbolically. And we also drop e to the power j omega t. We know it's there, but we are not writing it again. So what we do is we generate an equivalent representation denoted by capital V, which simply says Vm e to the power j theta v. We know that this is a real part, and we also know that e to the power j omega t is present on the right hand side, but we don't write it. This is called phasor representation of small v. Equation 8 is phasor for equation 7. An alternate method of doing the same is equation 9, where instead of writing e to the power j theta v, we put an angle sign and mention the angle. Both representations are equally valid. Note that e to the power j omega t, although not explicitly shown, is still present in the phasor. You should be fairly confident in converting a given signal in time domain into phasor domain, and other way around. By the way, the unit for voltage phasor V is also volts. In many books, you will see that instead of using Vm for defining the phasor, they are using Vrms. Fine, it can be done, but I am going to stick to the classical method where instead of RMS value, we will be using peak value for defining phasors. Not a big issue. Okay. Now, AC current can similarly be represented by a phasor. Same methodology. If I am given small it as Im cos omega t plus theta I, the phasor for that signal is Im e to the power j theta, or Im with an angle sign of theta. Phasor for power generally is not done. We do it, but in a different manner. We do not do it in this case. Okay, I'll come to that later. But phasors for voltage and current are very commonly used to simplify the analysis of AC circuits. Some examples here for converting a time domain signal to phasor. Sorry. Obtain the phasors for the following instantaneous signals. A, Vt is cos omega t. So amplitude is 1 volt. By the way, units are given within brackets. Amplitude for the signal in A is 1 volt and theta V is 0. So the answer is fairly straightforward. 1 e to the power j0, which is actually 1. In such a case, mentioning e to the power j0 is unnecessary, but technically speaking, it should be there. The answer is 1. E to the power j0 is 1 anyway. So part A is quite simple. Part B, slightly more interesting. Now the function is sine omega t, not cos omega t. So you need to, first of all, magnitude is still 1, but now you have to fit sine omega t into the standard cos omega t plus theta v type of representation. So that's what I have done here. Sine omega t, I think, is cos of omega t minus pi by 2, right? So phasor would actually be 1 e to the power minus j pi by 2, or 1 with an angle of minus 90 degree in this case. In part C, we have got an amplitude greater than 1 now. So it's 10 sine omega t volts. Obviously, the answer is 10 with an angle of minus 90 degrees. Part D, tan of cos omega t plus 45 degrees. Here this signal is fitting the standard form directly. So the answer is 10 e to the power j 45 degrees. In E, cos has become sine compared to D. So let's see. By the way, look at the solution for D. It is 10 e to the power j 45 degrees. Oh yeah, the units I think for D were millivolts. Yeah, it's in millivolts. So the phasor is also going to be in millivolts. And you can simplify it in the rectangular form. The phasor actually turns out to be 7.07 plus j 7.07 millivolt approximately. In case of E, you have got a sine signal, sinusoidal signal. So you break it up, or rather you convert it into cosine signal before generating the phasor. What we get is, I think, 10 e to the power minus j 45 degrees, and the units were microvolt, I think. So the phasor would also be in microvolt. F is a current signal in milliamperes minus tan cos omega t. You have to fit it in the standard form. I am cos omega t plus theta I. I think I have done it correctly, but you double check. Okay. Yeah, I think it's correct. You can look at the rest of them also. The last one I have not solved. I would like you to solve. I want you to do it yourself. Okay. If you have difficulty, contact me. We can always take it offline. Okay? So this is about how to obtain phasors from a given time domain signal. Now, how do we use all this for simplifying the analysis of circuits, analysis of AC circuits? Okay, so let me now move to the next document. We may not be able to finish it today, but let's try as much as we can. We will. Let's take the simplest possible case where the resistance, the load is a pure resistor. We have done it in time domain, but let's try the same thing in phasor domain. In phasor domain, the circuit is written as shown on the right hand side. We do not write small v, we write capital V, which is the phasor representation of small v. And in a similar manner, the current is written as capital I, which is the phasor equivalence of small I. Ohm's law applies here also. So in phasor domain, the current is V divided by R. Okay, and I will show this to you later also, but in this case, the formula for power is unchanged. It's Vrms into Irms. We derived it using time domain. The same thing will be shown here also. Now, one additional concept that comes in here is what we call complex power. Don't get too scared, because these things, once you understand the basics, are very easy to apply for actual problems. Remember, in time domain, we had seen that, at least in a very general case, the instantaneous power had a constant term and a time dependent term. That fact is being captured in frequency domain through using a concept called complex power. Complex power, denoted by S, is defined as 1 by 2 multiplied by V phasor multiplied by complex conjugate of I phasor. Take it from me. This is the way it is defined. Okay. If I were using phasors with RMS values, 1 by 2 would not have been there. But since I am using phasors with peak values, 1 by 2 has to be there in the definition. Suppose you accept this definition from me. Then in this particular case, where the load is purely resistive, what is the value of S? Note that V in general is represented by equation 5 in phasor domain. So I will be V upon R, which is Vm divided by R e to the power j theta V. And let me define Vm divided by R as Im. And e to the power j theta I is the general representation for I. Of course, in this particular case, theta I and theta V are equal. So although I'm writing on the right hand side of equation 7, theta I, it actually is equal to theta V because the load is purely resistive. Now, once I have got V and I figured out, I use the definition of S. Half V into complex conjugate of I. V is Vm e to the power j theta V. I is Im e to the power plus j theta I. So if I take complex conjugate, it becomes Im e to the power minus j theta I. Okay. Multiply the two and remembering that theta V and theta I are equal to each other, I get Vm Im by 2, which is Vrms Irms, which is exactly the power value that we got using time domain technique. Vrms is Vm divided by square root of 2, Irms is Im divided by square root of 2. So S turns out to be into Irms, which was exactly the value of P that we got using time domain in this case. Although S is supposed to be a complex number in general, in this case it is a purely real number. Okay, and units for S in this case at least are watts. A simple calculation. An AC voltage 200 cos omega t volts is applied across a 10 ohm resistor. Calculate the complex power generated in the load. Vm is 200 volts, theta V is 0. So the phasor value for the voltage is 200 volts. Okay, peak value. Current phasor will be 200 divided by 10 amperes, which is 20 amperes. So you do Vm Im divided by 2 for S. It turns out to be 2000 watts or 2 kilowatt. Alternatively, you can do Vrms Irms. So 200 divided by square root of 2 multiplied by 20 divided by square root of 2. That also gives you the same result. Okay, simple calculation. Magnitude of S, although it is the same in this case as the actual value, but in general, magnitude of S is known as apparent power. We'll come to that later. Now, case 2, using phasor technique, purely inductive load. In time domain, the formula was small v equal to L d small I by dt. When you go to phasor domain, remember that e to the power j omega t type of time dependence has been assumed, although we don't write it in phasors all the time. If you take d by dt of e to the power j omega t, you get j omega multiplied by e to the power j omega t. E to the power j omega t is dropped because it's there, but we don't write it. So differential coefficient essentially means you multiply the value by j omega in frequency domain. You don't need to worry about actually differentiating the value of I. You simply take the value in phasor domain and multiply it by omega. Sorry, j omega. So equation 12 in phasor domain essentially gives you V equal to j omega I. J omega Li, because L factor is also there in the equation. No differential coefficients are involved here. Again, we define the reactance of the inductor XL. And using that definition, we write V equal to JXL into I. JXL is defined as the impedance, IMPEDANCE, impedance of the inductor. The unit for impedance is ohm. The unit for XL is also ohm. Okay. Yeah, here I'm mentioning it. The impedance is defined as V divided by I. It's all in phasor domain now. Okay. Time domain is gone completely. So impedance turns out to be JXL, which is J omega L or J 2 pi F. Complex power in this case, half VI complex conjugate. So half into, remember I is V upon Z. So complex conjugate of V divided by Z will be V complex conjugate divided by Z complex conjugate. And V multiplied by V complex conjugate gives you magnitude of V square. So S turns out to be as given by equation 20. However, the fact is that Z is purely imaginary in this case. It's J omega L. So S will turn out to be purely imaginary in this case. Okay. It relates to the fact that in time domain we saw 90 in case of inductive load. Now, in case of capacitance, after this, I think I'm going to stop. The series RLC circuit we cannot begin today. In case of a capacitance, you use the well-known equation again, IT equal to C dV by dt. And remember that d by dt is replaced by j omega if you go to phasor domain. So you get equation 22, which controls the behavior of the circuit. I equal to j omega C into V. We define the reactance of the capacitor as 1 upon omega C, and we figure out the impedance of the circuit as 1 upon j omega C, which is minus j upon xc. The complex power again works out to have a purely imaginary value. Okay. Phasor domain's main advantage is that you don't have to worry about differentiating and integrating. And the downside is that we have to use complex numbers. So I think I'll stop here. Next time I'll continue working on series RLC load using phasor domain. And then we will solve some numerical problems. And this document is the last document as far as the EE fundamentals are concerned. After that, our intention is to move to measuring instruments. I'll start talking about various measuring instruments that are used in the lab and even in real life for measuring electrical quantities like voltage, current, power, energy, impedance, etc., etc. The first instrument that I'll be discussing in detail will be cathode ray oscilloscope. You have seen it in the basic electronics lab. We'll go through the theory of that instrument. Then we will talk about ammeters and voltmeters, how to design them using galvanometers. Then we will also talk about an instrument called ammeter and resistance meters, then power meters, then energy meters. So after the next lecture, we will spend about 3 to 4 lectures talking about measuring instruments of various kinds, both for DC and AC. Then I'll move to three-phase circuits. And then final topic before the midterm will be transformers. Okay, that's the plan. Let me